Oh, my guardian angel, I miss you every day. Each night I clap my hands together, close my eyes and pray. I hope that you're still out there, that you remember me, and one day soon our eyes will meet between the glass of a television screen. What if the cartoon character behind your screen was real, had a life of their own, but was also interested in your life? Angel Hare is an animated analog horror series created by the Mangan sisters and published to their YouTube channel, The East Patch. The series follows Jonah, a man flooded with memories after finding a VHS collection of his favorite childhood cartoon, Angel Hare. This sends him down a rabbit hole as he recounts dark memories from his childhood and watches the tapes of these episodes, comparing the retail release with his own home recordings. Of course, I wouldn't be talking about it if it was as simple as variations between releases. No. Something far stranger happens as Jonah goes on his trip down memory lane. Something terrible. And good, it's complicated. So, today, we're going to explore Angel Hare. We're going to talk about angelic rabbits, one man's obsession with them, and also some of the other works of the Mangan sisters, and how they really like the idea of someone interacting with characters behind a screen. And as I usually say in my videos, I recommend watching the series itself before watching my video. Not only does it help you understand what I'm talking about, but it also helps the original creators out by actually giving them views, that's an important thing on YouTube. I'm going to link the full Angel Hare playlist in my description at the top, so click on it and give it a look. And yes, if you're an Angel Hare fan, you'll know that there's been some recent developments with the series, and I am definitely going to talk about them. We got a music video and a Season 3 on the way. That will be towards the end, so stay tuned to hear the full story. Having said all that, let's dust off our VCR, pop in the first Angel Hare VHS tape, and learn some lessons with Angel Gabby.
Good morning, Francis. I love to hear you call. Oh, have you brought a new friend with you?
The first Angel Hare tape, titled Were You an Angel Hare Kid?, establishes the basic premise of our show. Our lead character finds a retail VHS box set for a cartoon called Angel Hare that he watched as a child. The cartoon follows Angel Gabby and her friend Francis as Gabby teaches him and the viewers life lessons from a Christian perspective.
Faith and hope give us the strength to face every challenge.
But Jonah notices the tapes are different than he remembers, so he digs up his old VCR recordings of the show to compare to. But if that was all there was, it would be more akin to a video essay about an old TV show, wouldn't it? As you can see, the show usually comes in two parts. One part is voiceless narration that is put on screen from Jonah, giving us his insights into what we're seeing. The second part is, well, what we see. This is usually segments from the Angel Hare cartoon or live footage of Jonah doing things in the real world, but it's usually the animated segments. These animated segments are where the main horror from this series stems from, if you would even call it horror. Angel Hare is more of a creepy suspense mystery. You see, the difference between the retail version and home recordings is pretty big. We're not just talking animation differences here, or voice acting differences. In the retail version of the show, Gabby talks in that indirect way kids' infotainment shows usually do.
Hello there. My name is Angel Gabby. What's yours? That's a beautiful name. It's wonderful to meet you, and I hope we can be friends.
Addressing the idea of the audience behind the screen rather than any individual person, because of course she can't. She's a cartoon, a pre-made piece of art. The VCR recording, though, is a whole different ballgame. Angel Gabby introduces herself as Angel Gabriel instead of Gabby, talks directly, and I mean directly, to our main character Jonah.
Hello there. My name is Angel Gabriel. What's yours? It's wonderful to meet you, Jonah. I hope I can be a good friend to you.
This is emphasized further when asking him about a toy or book that's special to him and naming the exact book he holds up, not to mention watching him cross the room to get the book.
Can you think of a toy or storybook that's special to you? That's a great book. Just like Babe, you can grow up to do whatever you want, Jonah.
This is the crux of what is creepy in Angel Hare. The implication that this character, Angel Gabby, was actually alive when Jonah was a child and interacting with him. This only compounds as the series goes on, because just starting from this episode, it doesn't really seem nefarious.
I hope I can be a good friend to you.
I have to give the creators credit because the little touches are what makes this whole series creepy. The way the living version of Gabby's eyes shake when staring like a person's would, or how they follow him across the room. Not to mention, they just make her more emotive than her retail VHS counterpart, which is spooky in its own way because of how flat her counterpart is. Speaking of Gabriel, the angel that Gabby gets her namesake from is from the core Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and any I might be forgetting. Gabriel is an archangel who is responsible many times for announcing the will of God to the people of biblical stories. Gabriel came to many people within the stories of these different books to explain visions and hand out prophecy. I don't think the connection between the actual angel in the Bible, Gabriel, and Gabby is that important for the overall story of Angel Hare, but we'll discuss more of that later. We end with Jonah realizing he's forgotten a lot about his childhood, but these tapes are helping him remember.
It's a beautiful day, Francis. We shouldn't take it for granted.
Tape 2 begins with Jonah doing research on the company that made Angel Hare, called Wreath of Life. The search is fruitless, however, as no logs of the company seem to exist. Though the company that re-released the show, Keith Publishing, does have a history that we may mention later. This episode follows the formula from the first tape, with Jonah comparing the two different versions. Angel Gabby's retail counterpart teaches a lesson on hope and faith and how it can keep you strong in the face of despair.
It may not make us physically strong, but it can give us resolve and fortitude when we need it.
The recorded version, Angel Gabriel, gives Jonah a lesson on how to be strong in the face of a very specific threat.
I can show you how to be stronger, even though you're so small.
Using some of the vague biblical language of the show, she teaches Jonah how to block his door with a chair to keep his enemy at bay, and then directs him to hide in the closet.
Like David's little pebble against Goliath, this little chair is going to be stronger than anyone who comes to your door. Look at that! It's so strong. Now let's get in the closet.
Then instructing him on how to keep calm by doing deep breathing in the face of adversity.
I like to take a big, slow breath to keep me calm. Would you like to try? Very good, Jonah. Now you don't have to be scared, even if he finds you.
The implication is that someone, simply called he, hurt Jonah as a child. Whether this would have been his father or one of his mother's boyfriends is not discussed, and that Angel Gabriel is trying to help Jonah defend himself. Not only that, but Angel Gabby is already aware of the abuse that is taking place, and has possibly helped Jonah deal with it before based on some of the lines within the episode.
Even if he finds you.
While the implications of some unknown entity interacting with your child through their TV is terrifying, that same terrifying entity trying to help them against the real threats in their life is uplifting. I do have to say that I really like the way they characterized Angel Gabriel as sweet in this episode. The voice actress playing her does a fantastic job. The cut to her face when she says,
"Now let's get in the closet,"
is both creepy and funny at the same time as well, because it's just so sudden. And also, I love this little yawning cloud at the start. It's probably my favorite character in the entire show, but sadly, it never shows back up again. I also want to mention that at least in this first season, when Angel Gabriel is interacting with Jonah through the TV screen, that the show is still going on in the background, which I think is also a really cool detail. In this specific episode, you can see the edge of the words faith and hope when it zooms in to talk to her, and also Francis continues talking even as she's talking to Jonah.
I see, Gabby.
I also just noticed while editing that when it zooms in here, it zooms in past the label of VCR recording, which it wouldn't have done that in the original show, so I guess that was a little oversight. Just a funny detail I wanted to point out. With Tape 2, it seems that things are only getting darker, but this is only the beginning. What more has Jonah forgotten? It's funny how dark the previous tape is, and then we get this. The letters videos are more bonus than anything. They do give us little bits of what could be canon information about the series, though. Here we learn that there are other Angel Hares, and that there are demon hares as well.
She doesn't like me talking about all that.
And as is typical in the Christian Abrahamic canon, they can be a bit more complex than just a rabbit with horns, even coming to you as ideas and things like that.
Demon hares don't always appear as plainly as a rabbit with horns. Sometimes they look like an opportunity or a feeling.
What do you mean by that?
We also get a little bit more of Francis's personality, and that's about it really.
Goodbye.
Right from the get-go, we get back into the dark and heavy stuff. Jonah questions whether the scars he has on his body that came from his childhood are from horseplaying, as his mom used to tell him. The obvious implications being that he had enough scars to question it in the first place, and I think this informs his curiosity. The other obvious implication being that the scars came from this he character from the previous episode. We also get a peek at his collection of home-recorded VHS tapes, which feature episodes such as Dealing with Bullies and A Day Out. I also like how real it is that the tapes feature multiple different shows and also shorthand, just calling the show different names, which is very classic parent thing to do with VHS tapes if you lived in that generation. Angel Bunny and Guardian Angel are not what the show is called, Mom. Since we're at this point, I'm going to mention a video by the creator MoFace that breaks down most of the references made in Angel Hare in my description. I'm mentioning that here because she goes so far as to track down the other TV shows that are featured on these tapes to see if they tie into what's going on in Angel Hare. This is in case you do want every little scrap you can get. But back to my own analysis. I meant to mention this before, but some episodes of Angel Hare have in-episode titles. This episode's in-episode title is She Broke Character Mid-Show, which wouldn't be important if not for the context of the episode. Angel Gabby here is pretending to be her regular TV show counterpart before someone leaves the room.
I'm no good at fighting actual battles.
Not once if he's not coming back for a while.
Most of the time, the in-episode titles are not super important. They give us context for something we're going to figure out by just watching the episode. Now, I want you to notice the difference between Jonah's narration and what is actually happening in this tape.
I want you to take that off the table very carefully, only holding the handle. Can you hold it up so I can see what kind it is?
Gabriel seems to run childhood Jonah through how to dismantle a firearm after the person who is terrorizing him leaves the room. She teaches him how to hide the separate parts throughout the place.
Now that we've got the pieces apart, let's think of somewhere to hide them where nobody can use them for harm.
Not only that, but teaches him how to cover his tracks when doing things he isn't supposed to.
It would be very incriminating. We can learn that word later, but it could get you into trouble.
But the key thing, at least to me, is that Jonah doesn't seem to acknowledge the implications of what Gabby is saying or what his child self did, instead wondering why he was alone with her so often and where she went. I think the disparity between what is happening on the tape and what Jonah says in regards to it is important, especially as we move forward in the series. Now, I know he will talk about what they did later, but I believe it's important to bring up this moment now. Him seemingly having this disparate reaction and way of thinking to the events that are happening in the past that he can't remember. I'd also like to note that the title is a reference to the Big Bad Wolf from the story Little Red Riding Hood, insinuating that Gabby or Jonah are secretly dangerous. And again, I think it's cool how her eyes do these little movements that make her seem more real, and how she references having taught him exercises to stay calm in the previous episode. That's some nice continuity.
Do you remember what we decided to do if you're ever afraid?
As Jonah continues watching the tapes, he admits that he feels no fear from the implications of Gabby's sentience. Instead, a dread that something happened that tore them apart. This continues his growing apathy over the strangeness of his situation and Gabby's existence. In the tapes, both the VHS recording and retail versions, the lessons taught are about how lying is bad, and how you don't have to forgive a liar, but there is virtue in mercy, so basically virtue in forgiveness.
The Bible tells us to forgive, but Proverbs 19 also warns us about the consequences of lying.
Of course, the sentient version of Gabriel is a lot more pragmatic and kind of dark in her lesson, basically instructing him on how to make himself look innocent.
Will you ever forgive me?
Go to a friend's house when something bad happens. They are going to ask you what happened, Jonah, so you have to make sure you're gone when the time comes. We have to make sure you only have truth to tell.
Jonah seems only a little shocked by this. Gabby admits that you can forgive a liar, but then quotes Revelation 20.
You can forgive Francis if you want, but it will be difficult to ever trust him again. Revelations warns us of the place prepared for liars. It's up to you, Jonah. What would you like me to do?
Yes, it is Revelation, not Revelations. This is a common mistake that even I've made. Revelation 20 basically says that those who don't follow God's word will be tossed into the lake of fire with Satan. She's saying Francis is going to burn in hell, basically, and
Jonah
will too if you lie. Again, pragmatic honesty, especially with how this conversation starts and ends.
They are going to ask you what happened, Jonah. I'll help you however I can.
We don't know what exactly they planned, but it can be assumed that they're planning the death or injuring of Jonah's abuser, known as He, and that Gabriel was a part of it somehow. If we want to get even more conspiratorial, she possibly caused the flood at the records building mentioned as well, that wiped away all the records of whatever happened. Based on the song in the background, this event might be what led to him forgetting Angel Gabby as well. The song, Guilty Shadows by Kathy Johnson, has the lyrics plainly heard in the background, "Perhaps a tear or two will fall, but I'll forget I ever saw your face and chase those guilty shadows on the wall." And while, as per usual, I like how much they get out of the simple expressions on Angel Gabriel, it is also funny to me how worried and concerned Francis looks throughout the entire episode. He just looks like he's disassociating, like, oh my god, I'm a part of something, oh shit. Jonah takes a trip back to his childhood home, where he first met Gabby, to see if there is any other evidence of what happened during his childhood. I think this trip for Jonah serves a dual purpose. He wants to feel closer to his guardian angel that he lost, but also find the best way to get back to her. I will state one small inconsistency that bothered me when I got to this point in the series, which is why did he have the VHS recordings at his house and didn't remember that he had them until he saw the VHS retail copy, but has to go home for this other stuff? It's just a little thing, but it's one of those things that I noticed. Of course, when Jonah does go home, he does find something. In fact, a lot of something. A box with his name on it containing a myriad of Angel Hare merch and drawings, as well as a series of VHS tapes and different scrapbooks. What follows is a montage showing us different scraps of information from the contents of the box, clips from the tapes, and scans from the scrapbook pages. This episode is actually the closest the series gets to standard analog horror fare, but I really do like the way it is delivered, like a little music video interlaid with snippets of sly information.
One of their neighbors kept on looking for them until they were found.
The scenes from the tapes discuss children's emotional and mental development, specifically in relation to aggression and emotional management. Some of them specifically talk about the idea of television causing violence. This is obviously alluding to the themes of the show so far, with Jonah's troubled childhood, the violent end that his abuser met at his hands, possibly, and how he was affected by his interactions with Gabriel. Not only that, but the scans of scrapbooks show that his mother became obsessed with finding more about the company related to the tapes, Wreath of Life. She went so far as to stalk the employees of the company that rebroadcasted the show, Keith Publishing, and attempted to steal from them and the company. Jonah, seeing all this, decides not to bring up his recent revelations to his mother, even after seeing her research. The tape then ends with a few more clips from the VHS he found in the box, alluding to the fact that he is going to search for Gabby.
If placed in a dark room, he would probably open his eyes while searching.
Because it shows that his mother developed somewhat of an obsession herself with finding the origins of Angel Hare. This means at some point, she caught on to Jonah's interactions with Gabby. How? Why? We don't really know. I assumed it happened after whatever violent event occurred between Jonah and he. The tapes on kids being violent could also imply that Jonah was always troubled, which would make sense considering the turmoil and abuse he faced in his childhood home from he. The main thing I want to point out in this tape is that Gabby and Angel Hare both seem to cause obsessive tendencies to develop in people. As the series goes along, but especially by the end of this first batch of episodes, Jonah has slowly become obsessed with finding Gabby. He does not care about Wreath of Life, or whatever happened in his past specifically, as we'll soon see. His mother's obsession was different than his own, seeming to be more out of fear for her son and whatever Gabby is than being obsessed with Gabby herself. It also seems that both Jonah and his mother had their memories wiped. I say that because it's the only way I could see his mother keeping all of these Angel Hare related things around him. Otherwise, it's really weird and convenient that she'd keep them, and we'll see a little scene later that implies that maybe they were going to do something with that, but we'll get to that when we get to it. Finally, before we move on to the next episode, let's discuss who Jonah's mom is. In the paperwork shown in the earlier montage, we see her referred to as Dr. Whitman. This means her and Jonah's last name is Whitman. This wouldn't be very important if it weren't for the fact that the Mangan sisters have used this name before for a different character, doctor title and all.
We are proud to present Julia Padilli's new and final series, Within the West Patch, adapted to animation for your enjoyment.
The West Patch was the first animated analog horror series the two sisters put together on YouTube, on another channel sharing the same name as the series itself, The West Patch. The West Patch could have a whole video dedicated to it on its own, but for now we're going to stick to the basics. The series is about a cartoon based on the books of a fictional woman named Julia Padilli. The running theme in the show is that the cartoon was changed from the original source material. This is actually how we meet Dr. Eulalia Whitman for the first time, who is possibly Jonah's mother, as she interviews the owner of Keith Publishing about these changes. This interview is referenced in documents we saw in Tape 5, apparently done under false pretenses to find out about Angel Hare. The West Patch has a very similar core idea to Angel Hare, but it uses it in a different way. While in the universe of the show, the changes are implied to have been more artistic in nature, the tapes that we watch show a cartoon that almost seems alive and trying to fight against the changes that we see before our very eyes. We don't know which is closer to the original source material, the one that we are seeing or the one that it's flickering to, but the version we get is very dark, featuring characters dying and others hiding this death, and having seemingly unspoken dark motives underneath the surface of what is meant to be a children's show. Here's my short review of the West Patch. I thought the ideas were neat and I like the animation style a good bit, but the West Patch is definitely a lot messier writing-wise when even compared to Angel Hare. It generally feels less focused and the characters are very one-note. I still think it's worth a watch, which is why I'll also be linking it in the description, especially if you liked Angel Hare. It's nice to see where the creators came from and got their start. Sadly, the series did not get a conclusion, which does leave it off in a very confusing place, but it still has charm to it and you can enjoy it for what it is. Anyway, this is yet again another viewer mail episode, sprinkling us with a bit of mostly tangential lore. I meant to mention this before, but I don't know where they get these questions. I just assume it's probably in the YouTube comments, maybe on their Patreon or even a Tumblr or something like that, because the comments are obviously from people actively watching this version of the show. This episode does lean a bit more into the creepy side of things. We've got Francis talking about unholy apparitions, whether or not there are other angel creatures.
Of course there aren't other magical creatures. Gabby isn't magical after all. If you see a magical creature, it's probably an unholy apparition trying to lure you into trouble. Trust me, even the friendly ones can be a wolf in sheep's clothing. As for other angel animals.
And noting how empty the forest is besides him and Gabby. And again, the fact that there are other Angel Hares.
I think you'll be interested to know that Gabby has a lot of very busy angel friends. They have a lot of work to do all over the world, and their duty is to help those in need.
After getting this question,
do you know how you became Jonah's guardian angel? Do you remember anything about Jonah?
the tape begins to really screw up, as you can see. It's pretty creepy. I think this is meant to be a double weird because of the idea that this tape was coming out when the show was being made, which would imply that they got this letter before Jonah was even born. But again, that's why I say the canon of these bonus episodes is a little questionable. Obviously, some of the things said in the bonus episodes do end up being true, but a lot of shows do this where they'll have like partially canon episodes where something will come up that will later be confirmed to be canon, so I would just take everything in the letters episode with a little grain of salt. Anyway, it's time to move on to the final tape of this first run of episodes.
We can stay here as long as you need me to.
Immediately, the song in the background spells out how Jonah is feeling, desperate to reconnect with Gabby. We also get another montage of scenes from Jonah's past, of yet unseen interactions with Gabby. In combination with the song, these show a deep longing to reconnect with her. And while it is sweet, I do also find it strange just how dedicated he is in the way he's talking about it specifically. Jonah decides to stream the show on Twitch to see if Gabby will show up. And she does, and his reaction is...
To hear you call. Have you brought a new friend with you?
Yes, but I'm fearful, Angel Gabby. I never know what to say.
Oh my god, what?
It's creepy, it's strange, the heavy breathing. I mean, even Gabby looks kind of disturbed by him, just like kind of freaking out for a moment before she realizes who he is.
It's me. Jonah, I'm here. Do you remember me?
So happy to see you, Jonah. Just look how well you've grown.
Look, a lot of people think this ending is sweet, but I also can't help but find it creepy. Jonah's heavy breathing, the way that Gabby delivers her lines and looks at him, and the hand touching, there's something unsettling about it for me. It feels wrong in a way. It is a happy ending in a sense, but it's the implications of everything that have led up to this that make it creepy. Not only that, but the way the whole situation is delivered. Jonah's growing obsession with Gabby that we will continue to see as the story goes on. The fact that he just stopped caring about the past and whatever they did. And again, how lifelike Gabby becomes at the end in this animation, at least with the idea that she is supposed to be alive.
So happy to see you, Jonah. Just look how well you've grown.
This ends the first series of episodes and left me with a lot of questions. Is Gabby actually an angel? And if she isn't, what is she? What is Wreath of Life? When did Gabby make Jonah forget her? Did she actually do it? And last but not least, what is Jonah like outside of this series? I think Jonah as a character is really interesting. He so quickly becomes obsessed with Gabby and finding her, wrapped up in what seems to be this immense feeling of comfort and warmth and happiness at just watching these shows and their interactions in the past, despite the implications of her existence and what they did. And in spite of the fact that Gabby helped Jonah hurt someone who was harming him, is she actually bad? Bad for Jonah or bad in general? I think the stipulation that she can only communicate with others through a live broadcast has very intriguing implications for her as a character and what she might be. It means that there's a set of rules that she has to operate by. We don't know if this is because of the makeup of her being or if it's more of a rule set by someone else, more of like an implied set of rules rather than something that is just like factually, I have to do this because it's just how I am. Again, I will remind you that I am not a religious scholar, as I said at the start, but from the little research I've done, what Angel Gabriel did isn't technically against what an angel might have done in theology. In fact, she lets Jonah make most of the decisions, just helping him when he is actually in need.
What would you like me to do?
But the vagueness of their actions lends doubt to what she actually is. We don't even know what they actually did. It could have been as bad as murder. It could have been scaring the crap out of someone or harming them bad enough that they would leave.
Children witnessing violent events on television.
The vagueness is what keeps it interesting. Not to mention how incessant Gabby was on not having Jonah lie, but then the show implies that they might have killed someone.
Go to a friend's house when something bad happens, and you won't have to lie about it when they ask you later. They are going to ask you what happened, Jonah.
That doesn't seem very Christian, but what do I know? My own personal theory so far is that Gabby isn't actually an angel. She's something else, but maybe not something that means harm. Maybe she's some kind of being that was brought into this world and speaks to people through a Christian lens because that's what they know. She might even change the religion mattering on the children that she's talking to, if she talks to other children. Of course, there's nothing in the show that shows that. That's just a fun thought. And to me, one of the driving things in this first season of episodes, and the thing that keeps it creepy, is Jonah's transition from this macabre interest to what happened to this obsession to reconnect with Gabby. He stops caring about the past, stops caring about the truth, and just wants to reconnect with Angel Gabriel. As I mentioned in passing earlier, this just makes me wonder about Jonah's life outside of this series, not including his past. Does he work? Is he a loner? Does he have friends? What is his mental health like? We know for a fact that he lives in a different city from his mother, which means he has his own residence, but we don't know much about him besides that. This is also why I say that Gabby is the real star of the show, because the Jonah character is mostly a framing to allow us to peek into this world and show what she is like. Besides knowing that Jonah is obsessed with Gabby, seems to love his mother, and that Gabby and him did something possibly violent to someone else, we don't actually know much about him. He's half his own character, half self-insert for the audience, as far as we know. Having said all that, I do like the twist of him not caring about what they did anymore. It makes sense in this dark way. He's formed a traumatic bond with this being, or whatever she is. I say that because you'll notice the mystery doesn't get solved. We don't know what they did or what fully happened, but it makes sense because Jonah stopped caring. More of this will show in Season 2, but for now, this ending and lead-up encapsulates Jonah's feelings on everything. His motivations changed from figuring out the past to getting Gabby back. Looking at this first run of episodes on its own, I think it has a really solidly self-contained story, and it holds a lot of creepiness and charm. It's a bit slow-paced, but the characters keep it charming and funny. It's not jump-out-of-your-seat scary, but it did give me a few chills at times, especially when dealing with the close-ups of Gabby and the implications of them.
Revelations warns us of the place prepared for liars. Do you remember what we decided to do if you're ever afraid?
The horror of the show primarily stems from the unrealness of it, but also Jonah's own reaction to the situations that are happening, his obsession, his want to become reconnected to Gabby, and his lack of care at the implications of what's going on. Another thing that I wanted to note, at least from my own perspective, is that the show is only really lightly religious. There are, of course, direct connections to Christianity, references to specific passages from the Bible, and biblical characters, names, and events. Though I have yet to mention it, Jonah's name is itself a direct reference to the Bible. Jonah in the Bible was a Jewish prophet told by God to go deliver a prophecy of judgment to the city of Nineveh for their wickedness, but gets scared and decides that he doesn't want to do that and ends up being swallowed by a giant fish. This is a really common story. I would be surprised if you live in America and haven't heard it at least once. And in the fish, he stays there for 3 days. He prays to God for salvation, and God saves him, but then tells him, hey, you still have to go deliver this prophecy, which this time he does. This is, of course, a simple retelling of the story, but the point I'm making is that Jonah, at least to this point in the story, only seems tangentially related to Jonah from the Bible, though we'll have more on that later. I personally think the religious angle in Angel Hare is probably just that, an angle, a way to tell an interesting story and give it some mystery, and I wouldn't also be surprised if the Mangan sisters have a history with Christianity themselves. And it does all work. I think that they are being somewhat respectful about the source material. Of course, I'm not the type of person who thinks taking Christian things and making it horror is disrespectful, and it varies from person to person. There's probably someone out there who sees Angel Hare and thinks it's blasphemy. I know a lot of evangelical Christian types because I live in the South, and you would be surprised at what they don't like for that exact reason.
City Chiefs, and everybody's celebrating some lady, some girl. That if you look at her concerts, man, she does satanic rituals.
From a purely technical standpoint, I also really like Angel Hare. I think the first season is really solid, and I think it's carried by the charm of its art and music and voice acting.
The colors show other animals that they're dangerous. We can be dangerous too, Jonah.
What do you mean by that?
It's a bit creepy, but not overly so, and it deals with dark topics, but it doesn't feel gratuitous. I like the simple animation style, the extra art that's used, I like the voice acting, I like the little bits of extra lore with Francis in the letter episodes, and I especially like the way everything is delivered. Saying it feels real might be a little far-fetched, but the ending is set up really solidly from the very start. The series is already on YouTube, showing that our character has some grasp of how websites work, and it's established since the start that the character can only interact via live broadcast because that's what he did as a kid. You put 2 and 2 together, and that ending makes perfect sense. I smiled when I realized that's where it was going because I thought it was so clever. I enjoy the mystery of it all, and I enjoy the character-driven story aspect of it. I can live with the fact that there are a lot of unanswered questions because the main character's motivations change throughout the story. He's driven by his want to get Gabby back, not to answer those questions, so it makes the ending make sense. Before we move on to the next part, the next video on their playlist is actually a collection of songs used in the series Unaltered, which I appreciate. But there is more to come. More Angel Gabby, more Francis, and more mystery. Next up is the Easter tape. Of course, Jonah sees more of his past interactions with Gabby in this tape. At first I thought there wasn't much to say on this tape, but I've reconsidered. The main point of this one is to show the future conflict of the next series of episodes. By the end of the tape, Gabby doesn't show up when called by Francis. What could it mean?
Oh, Angel Gabby!
We'll find out soon enough. But of course, there are some other things to point out about this tape. One is that Gabby and Jonah have been regularly interacting since the end of the first run of episodes. Another bit is with Francis and different Easter eggs. I think this is mainly a comedic bit, Francis showing up over and over with different Easter eggs that feature symbols that aren't exactly Christian TV friendly. None of these symbols seem particularly important. The most obvious one is an Ouroboros, which has many meanings in many cultures, but often represents the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. I've seen some theories that maybe Francis is a reformed demon hare or something along those lines, and I think that's really fun, but I don't know if there's enough in the show to actually point at that. Though, this moment and the coming series show that Francis is seeming to grow his own awareness if it wasn't always there to begin with. I do find this to be interesting because it makes me wonder what they actually are. Like, is Francis the same thing that Gabby is, or is he just happening to be alive because she's around him? Again, I don't know what Gabby is. I don't think she's a demon, but it's just funny that Francis is painting these symbols and Gabby becomes upset by him, which means, like, he has his own awareness and that he came up with these symbols on his own, which is just interesting. I mean, I get that it's a joke. I get it's just meant to be funny, but, like, how is Francis gaining sentience when he didn't seem to have it in that first run of episodes? What is he if he's not what Gabby is? Obviously, he isn't an angel, at least that we know, or at least in the context of the show so far. Speaking of which, and getting back into the biblical symbolism of the show, Francis is more than likely based on Francis of Assisi, a Catholic friar who founded the religious order of the Franciscans. There is a strong possibility that I mispronounced quite a few things there. Francis's design is very similar to a friar's, so that's pretty fun and makes the one-to-one comparison pretty easy. Here's a portrait of Francis of Assisi, also known as Giovanni di Pietro di Bernardone. That was a mouthful, and I might have mispronounced that too. Here's Francis of Assisi compared to Francis from Angel Hare. Frankly, the similarity is breathtaking, and I'm surprised I didn't see it before. So I didn't cover this originally, but the start of Angel Hare's playlist actually has a trailer for the first season in it. The reason I didn't cover it is because it doesn't have any additional information that you wouldn't learn from just watching the first series. This isn't true of the second season or series trailer. And yes, I keep saying series and season interchangeably. I watch some British TV and different places called different things. Cut me some slack. We do get more of a confirmation of Jonah's obsessive need to keep Gabby around. I think it's really interesting that his idea of normal is having Angel Gabriel in his life. I think the trauma and bond he formed with Gabriel in his youth, while it did save him, may have had lasting implications for his mental health. Not only that, but we get a little piece of footage that we didn't actually see from Season 1. This features Jonah and what seems to be his mother burning the drawings he did of Angel Gabriel. I think this is really interesting because it could imply an alternate ending or scenes that we didn't actually get to see, either from the previous season or the second season, because I will say, this shot is not featured anywhere else besides in this trailer. It makes me wonder if they didn't change the series up as they went along. I know I mentioned earlier that fans could have had an effect on the series. There's a possibility that the Mangan sisters were going to make the series a bit darker, and then they changed it because people fell in love with the characters so much. Of course, this is a complete shot in the dark, and there isn't really any evidence to prove this besides this one shot. So for all I know, what happens in the second series and what did happen in the first series was their plan from the very beginning. This is just something that I thought was really interesting to speculate on, because a lot of people did get very attached to Gabby and don't want to see her be bad. Same thing with the other characters, and I get it. But besides all those thoughts, this also continues to set up the main mystery for the next season. This trailer says, "Where did Angel Gabriel go this time, and will you help Jonah find her?" Really, Jonah doesn't even need the audience's help, because after only investigating for a few days, another mystery hops right into frame before his very eyes, or flies into frame. We start more or less where we left off. Jonah has been talking to Gabby every day, at least up until Easter. Then she disappears. Not only that, but there is a possibility that he did get some or all of his memories back and just hasn't shared them with us, the audience, yet. I do wonder what's more worrying, him remembering everything and not caring, or not remembering everything and not caring. Jonah continues to show behavior that under the circumstances I see as obsessive and strange. Doing drawings for Gabby and showing her, much better than the ones he did as a kid, by the way, very impressive. Claiming she's all he'd ever need, which is definitely a red flag. A note for my audience, you should never make your life's happiness or worth completely dependent on one person, especially if that person is a sentient cartoon rabbit of hazy or possibly angelic origins. That just sounds like trouble. Again, this makes me wonder what he does outside of his videos. What is his job? Does he have any friends? We don't know. Then, something happens. Apparently, the worst possible thing, even worse than her disappearing. Another Angel Hare shows up. Dark fur, a stoic expression. He looks bored, frankly. So I think Jonah's reaction here is really interesting and telling. Why is this rabbit's arrival the worst possible thing? Why does Jonah seem to feel an instant dislike, loathing, or even fear for this new character? We leave off during the credits with Jonah doing his deep, raspy breathing once again. This reaction is obviously meant to be a parallel to his reaction to coming in contact with Gabby again after all these years.
Love to hear you call. Have you brought a new friend?
That was meant to be a sort of panicked joy, while this is just meant to be a scared panic. He doesn't like this. This is not what he knew. This is not the Angel Hare. This is not Angel Gabby. His perfect world-balancing angel is no more, and instead is this guy. Seeing this new rabbit in the show makes Jonah feel sick. He doesn't even want to think about it. Part of this seems to be out of fear for what could happen to Gabby, or what did happen to Gabby, but also what could happen to himself. I think a part of his reaction is also with his obsession with Gabby and Angel Hare, and how this new rabbit shakes up the status quo. This isn't the show he once knew. Again, I'll reiterate that I think Jonah's reaction to Zag or Zaggy is meant to be a parallel to his reaction to Gabby. He feels immediate fear upon seeing Zag. He's scared because he knows he can be seen and believes that Zag might have the power to hurt him, as him and Gabby did his abuser in the past. He feels this, despite not feeling any of these feelings for Gabby, because he feels he can trust her. It feels to me that we're being shown this to say, see, it's weird that he was just okay with Gabby doing those things. This is how he should have reacted. It's also funny to me how bothered he is by Zag changing the script, despite that being something Gabby did constantly. Again, I feel this is to show that he liked and trusted Gabriel despite whatever she is being so abnormal to our reality and the hints at what they were doing. I do like the implications of what Zag says here about penitence and wisdom. It's very interesting and makes you wonder what he knows.
Respect and penitence gives us the wisdom to face every challenge. It may not make us obviously wise, but it can give us common sense when we need it.
It almost feels like he's calling out Jonah as guilty for his past with Gabriel, or even his strange obsession, or even acknowledging that coming back in contact with Gabby isn't wise for him. I also like that Zag can just unpause the show. Yes, this isn't to the full extent of what the show implies their powers are, but we haven't seen any on-screen examples of their powers besides them seeing off and interacting and things like that, so it's just neat. I just wanted to point that out. Jonah finally does what he sees as the nuclear option.
Let's follow the stream and... You're the one airing this? You aren't in a TV station. How are you doing this?
This sequence to me is interesting because it shows that Zag only has so much information on what is going on outside of the show and even inside of the show when it's being broadcasted, but also because I love this interaction between him and Jonah.
Are you able to record? Why did you put the show back on? Are you with Wreath?
I think it shows that Zag might not know as much about Jonah as I thought, but maybe it was the show implying that anyway. And I just really dig how Zag calls Jonah out twice.
I came to find her, genius. What are you doing?
For me, I wasn't nearly as scared, if at all, of Zag as I was by Gabriel when she was first introduced. A part of that is because I think the show is not trying to scare us with Zag. It doesn't do the zoom-ins on the eyes like it did with Gabriel. And to me, it's actually funny how scared Jonah is of Zag, despite him coming off as a less ominous figure compared to Gabby, in my opinion.
Hello there. My name is Angel Zag. What's yours? That's a beautiful name. It's wonderful to meet you, and I hope we can be friends.
I do understand why he is scared because of the implications of what has happened in the series, but I do think this also shows how lost in the sauce of his obsession with Gabby and Angel Hare as a show Jonah really is. I'd argue it'd be a normal response to be scared if a cartoon character in a live broadcast was aware of you and responded to you. So this actually puts a light on the fact that Jonah has been acting strange and obsessive through the series, and he is finally reacting normally to Zag. Yes, Jonah already has the information on the possibilities of what Zag is, so why should he be scared, especially if Zag is an angel? Because he's blinded by a childhood attachment formed through trauma bonding to this entity, to Gabby, or at least that's my thoughts. Again, I think Zag is a lot less scary than Gabby in just about every way, and I didn't really think Gabby was that scary in the first place, just kind of creepy. The episode ends with Jonah pleading for Zag to bring Gabby back, and he retorts with,
I came to find her, genius. What are you doing?
Again, I think this is a fun response, but when I think about what more Jonah could have done, I run blank. Honestly, sitting there interacting with this new character appears to make the most sense, but the show is obviously just trying to show that Zag, or Zaggy, is kind of a rough and tumble, asshole-ish character, and isn't probably a bad guy.
Fran, do you know this guy? Looks a little old for cartoon rabbits.
This is just another letters segment. A highlight of this episode is Francis talking about how he met Gabby and seeing him drawn as a real badger, which is fun and cute. Francis telling us his day job.
I'm an actuary.
And finding out that Gabby can apparently do a sonic blast-like screech. And since we are talking about Francis's origins, I'll go ahead and talk about the newest video on the East Patch, which is the music video about Francis, Oh Despair. This came out while I was making this video and is basically an animated version of this origin story of him meeting Gabby. It seems Francis was being tortured by some demon hares and was saved by Gabby. The video is fun, it's short and dark. The origin part of it is actually really short. Most of it is just Francis brooding. They also unveiled the Francis plushie at the end, so I'm going to link this video as well in the description so you can check it out for yourself. There isn't much new information in the music video, it's just fun, mostly references. So let's keep going. At the end of Bonus Case The First Files, Francis is dragged away by Zag as they have more work to do, probably on finding Gabby. We also find out that Zag does not like poker for some reason. The biggest mystery in the series so far, for sure.
How does Francis feel about his new pal there? Well, let me tell you, since he's gone here, things have been upside down. I try to organize poker night and he wants to play blackjack. I don't really like it, and I would appreciate it if he acted with a little more decorum.
Jonah begins to research who Zaggy might be, but didn't have much luck. I did my own research. That wasn't a sneeze, I was just laughing because that's all I wrote. I did my own research, and here it is. From what I've seen online, there are mentions of a Zagegel and a Zagzagel. Both are described as the Angel of the Burning Bush, though some say the Angel of the Burning Bush is just straight up God himself. Zag-Zagel is described as a separate entity who is also the Angel of Wisdom, so we'll go with that, I suppose, since that's been the implication of what Zag or Zaggy is, a character based on
respect and penitence gives us the wisdom to face every challenge,
which comes in even more later. Going back to the actual episode, I really liked the bit where the angel done in this realistic, older style looks over. It's really nice and spooky, and it's like the scariest thing in this season so far. And again, it's not even scary, it's just mostly creepy, but this second season has been missing that, in my opinion. What we learn in this episode is that Zag is looking for Gabby within the show. I do like that Zag has to try to force a lesson to get things moving. For a moment, I wondered if this was another rule, but more than likely, it's just Francis wanting things to be a bit more normal.
I think Gabby still likes to try to have a lesson.
You lousy motherfucker.
The quick lesson that Zaggy mentions about teamwork is apt.
Teamwork, diligence. Proverbs 27:17. Work with that.
Proverbs 27:17 is basically, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Which, is just saying people work better together as a team. If Zag and Francis work together, they'll figure things out. But of course, this is also ironic because Zag is not exactly letting Jonah help at this point, but will by the end. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, but they've been doing a bit of a turnaround on Francis's character. Francis in this second series of episodes is implied to be a lot more aware and possibly a living being himself. In the early parts of the series, specifically the first season, Francis didn't actually seem to be alive. There were a few moments where it seems he showed some awareness, but he really has taken on a full-blown personality of his own, seemingly since the Easter tape, just about. It's really interesting, and I know I say that a lot, and makes me lean towards the idea that the characters aren't actually angels, but something else, because Francis developing a life and personality of his own means he's also an entity of some type, possibly? That's just a theory, though. An angel hair theory. Anyway. Again, I think it's funny how bothered by Zag Jonah is, as if Gabriel ever cared about keeping the show on track. I mean, I guess she kind of did in her own way, just teaching the lessons in a more straightforward, mature, deviously helpful fashion.
We can be dangerous too, Jonah.
There also feels like there are hints at Zag's personality and who he might be, that he is logical. This lines up with him being the Angel of Wisdom. Again, more on that soon. There's also this interaction between Zag and Jonah. It does feel like they both equally care for Gabriel, almost like two competing friends or suitors in some type of drama, movie, or mystery.
Much appreciated, but I don't know you, pal. So how's about keeping the lights on? That'll be enough.
What we eventually get is Francis coming back with a drawing of a vision he says was sent by Gabby. This is notable for a few reasons. One, why didn't he give it to Jonah in the first place? Can he only interact with the other characters in the show? And two, it's kind of terrifying. I'm friends with an angel, so they bestow visions upon me. Alright. The drawing is, well, I think it's cool, even if Zag doesn't like it.
Well, ain't this bupkis? You'd think a kid's flick would keep it simple.
The idea of something like this being in a kid's cartoon is also funny. The kind of thing that would unintentionally give children nightmare fuel. Be not afraid! This episode ends with Zag asking Jonah if he can put anything on the air, which Jonah then alludes to the fact that he is going to turn off the show to go and find Gabby. Straight up, this means that these beings, these angels, or whatever they are, can hop between shows. This is confirmed in the next episode. I also want to take note of the song that's been playing in the background, Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea. As Angel Hare has done before, this song has significance to the episode. Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea itself is an idiom that basically means you're stuck in some sort of hard-to-decide dilemma. It's not deep to say this song is here to represent Jonah's mixed feelings on having to trust Zag, who is his only choice to really find Gabby. In this episode, we learn, as I said earlier, that Zag isn't from Angel Hare originally, but another show. He even gives Jonah directions on how to find a copy. The implications of this are amazing. Somehow Zag knows where to find a copy of his show that Jonah can put into a projector. So far, it's been established that they can only communicate through live broadcasts, but are they connected to the media they're in? Like, can they feel it? The fact that Zag knows where a copy is just really cool. We then cut to Jonah getting into a church. The implication seems to be that Zag even helped him get a key to this place, which is kind of wild. That, or he just asked the church, but the music makes us think something more covert or underhanded is going on, but that fits the theme of the entire season, really. Jonah just streams the projection with a webcam, which is classic YouTube, classic internet, really. So, here's the big twist. Here's why I said this fits the theme. Zag actually comes from a private eye show called Wild Hare. Wild Hare is a detective noir style show, and this is hinted at throughout the season. Zag's general demeanor and approach to finding Gabby, the episodes being called cases instead of tapes, the more mystery noir vibe to everything rather than horror, the letters episodes referring to files instead of letters, not to mention the idea of Zag being the angel of wisdom, if we want to go with that interpretation. Overall, this has been where we've been heading, and we are now here. It's funny to think that this show was also made by Wreath of Life, the idea of a Christian cartoon company, if that's even what it is, and not some energy being, making a mature cartoon similar to Dick Tracy that teaches kids Christian lessons is really funny to me. There is no comparison between an original and a live version this time. We are given the characters straight as real living characters, and that is it. We're introduced to Francine, who is Zag's sidekick character like Francis is to Gabby in Angel Hare.
Tell me that's a new client.
Francine, this is Francis.
Of course, I remember you.
We even get to see Francis himself as a human, and immediately it's hinted at that he's been on the show before, and that he ate too many mints.
You lousy motherfucker.
We also get to see that there are actually other characters besides Zag and Francine. You know, some people shoot at Zag. It is a cartoon detective mystery thriller similar to old DC comics and cartoons, Batman, Dick Tracy, and the like, so obviously there has to be villains. Angel Hare can be done with just 2 characters, really. In this new show, the drawing of the vision that Francis got becomes a newspaper with hints to help Zag solve the case, talking about a starlet on a new stage. What happens next kind of bothers me, but I can't tell you why yet. Basically, that hint was enough for Jonah to know exactly what to do. It seems Wreath of Life really liked their viewer mail episodes. A quick breakdown of what we learn is that Zag does in fact carry a piece, and what piece he carries.
Zag's daily carry is a Cult Police Positive 38 Special. I prefer something with a bit more firepower myself, but that's just me.
How Zag and Francine met.
Well, when Z rolled into town out of nowhere and got roughed up by Donna Reno's gang, who found him in an alley and patched him up? My neighbor. And I eavesdropped on the whole thing and invited myself in. Big strong guy like that on the outs. What self-respecting 30-something single gossip wouldn't?
And also why Zag doesn't like poker. He got his heart broken by a poker dealer. You can get all of the juicy details yourself in the episode. But I do like the general mood though, the change of atmosphere, the way there's like cigarette burns on the tape. It's nice that they keep it consistent between the genres as the episodes switch. Now, before we get into the final episodes of Angel Hare so far, we've got to talk about the game. Angel Hare's Learning Adventure by Horse. This game is cute, but insubstantial. More than likely it isn't canon, as it was made by a third party, seemingly for a game jam, though it seems people from the show did help with the game, like voice actors, and that is awesome. I say all this because Gabby in the game also knows the main character to be Jonah, which is confusing with how the world has been established to work so far. The shows needing to be live, broadcasted, or streamed to contact the characters doesn't exactly fit in line with the game, but it kind of does. It's a weird gray area. I think this is a fun little distraction though. It's visually nostalgic of a 90s point-and-click adventure game, but plays more like an early 2000s Flash game. We're basically doing a lot of little tasks to collect tickets to ride a hot air balloon. That's the reward at the end of the game. The first game is with Francis and is essentially whack-a-mole, but his game ends up broken, so he just gives us a ticket anyway and wants us to not say anything about it. The first time I played though, I just clicked on Francis and he just gave it to me, so I was kind of confused because I hadn't actually played the game, but I just went with it, like okay. We then learn from Zaggy's game that the game, and Zaggy at least, are aware that we're a cheater. This is how I realized that the first game was like cheating, even though I didn't get that revealed to me the first time. And so eventually we do go to Gabby's game. It's one of those hidden matchup reveal games, and Gabby very quickly figures out what happens. I guess the ticket has some type of like tainted aura to it. So we go back and have to confront Francis's inner demons with a mallet. For a moment, it feels like we're going to see poor Francis get his brains bashed in with this mallet. Gabby gives him a light but stern bonk and talking to, and then we go on our way for our air balloon ride. Like I said at the start, the game was made for a quick game jam, and considering that, I think it's a nice but short experience. The game did have one fatal flaw though. I solved the Zaggy puzzle in the second part of the game and then clicked on Zaggy, and it caused the animation that is supposed to play to complete the puzzle to never play, leaving me and Zaggy stuck in an eternal staring contest together. So yeah, all in all, for a free, like roughly 10-minute experience, I think it was really cute, and you should give it a play if you like Angel Hare. Again, linked in the description. Anyway, onwards to Case 5 and Case 6. The start of Case 5 is another montage of moments between Jonah and Gabby. Of course, this is meant to emphasize their connection, but also Jonah's feelings towards Gabby. I actually marathoned this series with a friend while writing this script, and it was about at this moment that he wondered if Jonah was in love with Gabby. I wanted to push back on it, but Jonah's feelings are incredibly strong and interesting. I personally don't think it's the case that Jonah is in love with Gabby, at least not in a romantic way, and after the conversation, neither did my friend. But I will say the idea that he is in love with Gabby in some way is probably the case. She took a lot of care of him when he was young and basically saved his life. If anything, though, this moment does further my opinion that Jonah has an unhealthy trauma-related bond and attachment to Gabby. After this montage, Jonah comes to the conclusion that she would never abandon him on purpose, meaning something must have happened. Look, I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but it really is crazy how much of this series is driven by Jonah's pure need to be in contact with Gabby. I think he really does care and love her, but I have to wonder how much of him wanting to find her is driven by selfishness or like mental health problems. You know, again, what is his life outside of this? Jonah makes a plan with Zag and Francis. Their plan does bother me though. Like I said earlier, the previous season felt like it had seeded its solution in very early on. We know he can only communicate with Gabby via live broadcast because he's watched the two different versions of the tapes, establishing it as a point of comparison. It's a really clever solution when he live streams it on Twitch. The second season, him coming up with the solution being streaming a bunch of instances of Angel Hare and Wild Hare feels like it just kind of comes out of nowhere. It's just like, hey, I know what we need to do this. Okay, it's not as clever. Jonah finally tries to ask Zag more questions about what him and Gabby are, to no avail. Zag gives Jonah an ultimatum: find the truth or get Gabby back.
Look, buddy, I need you to slow down and ask yourself an important question right now. Think about your little rabbit friend and really ask, do you want to know? Or do you want her back? Huh?
And to no one's surprise, he chooses getting Gabby back. They go live and quickly find that Gabby had never left at all, actually. Jonah, like us, does not know how Gabby or Zag or any of these beings interact with our world. I don't even fully understand from watching. Gabby was apparently trying to help too many people over the internet at once and caused herself to become segmented or too spread out in a sense. I think this is a cool concept. It means that these characters, these beings or angels or whatever they are, have some kind of bandwidth or energy, and creating too many instances of themselves or spreading themselves out too much or using too much of it can break them in a sense.
There are so many voices calling. It isn't like before, Zagzagal.
The way I related this in my brain was like in the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix. There's a part later in the movie when the AIs begin to have thousands of different online relationships and conversations with people all at the same time. It would be like that if it also caused their data to become corrupted, if that makes sense. There aren't many hints to this solution, like I said, but there is a hint to the problem. See, if you pay attention throughout the second season, you'll see these little shots where lines pop up on screen. And if you screenshot these specific frames, like I did, it turns out that they're part of this picture that makes up Gabby in this final scene. Here's the ones that I managed to grab. Not complete, but it's there, it's something, it hinted at this thing at the end. And I think it's a fun thing to look back at retroactively and go, huh, you know, they kind of did seed this throughout the season, just not as well as what they did in the first one, in my opinion. Continuing on, Gabby strangely apologizes to Jonah.
Oh, Jonah. I'm sorry.
He's a big kid. He can handle himself. Are you okay?
I say strangely because Gabby as a character has been overly giving to him. In fact, this entire situation is even brought on by her giving and helpful nature. I think this shows something interesting about her character. Despite the fact that all she's trying to do is help people, including Jonah, she still feels bad that she can't do everything, which is a pretty realistic character trait for people who are overly giving and empathetic. Or angels are energy beings who are overly giving and empathetic. You get what I mean. I do like this creepy little moment where Gabby's art style changes to an older fashioned one and she says they've adapted before. I say it's creepy because I've always found this specific style of art spooky even as a little kid. Yes, I was creeped out by Max and Ruby as a kid, you don't need to ask. I feel like Jonah also shows a good bit of self-pity here, which I think does play into the obsessive qualities he's shown towards Gabby. This situation is only partially his fault, but he goes for the nuclear option. As I've pointed out, we only really get hints as to how Jonah is as a person outside of the series, but a lot of the ways he's interacted with Gabby as an adult shows some sort of trauma bond or maladaptive behavior pattern, probably caused by the tumultuous situation he faced as a child and her helping him, as I've said a few times now. So to sum it up pretty quickly, the ending is that Jonah, Gabby, and Zag decide that Jonah will help them from the outside in the human world to navigate the internet so they can continue to help people in this new landscape.
You want a guy on the outside again?
And now you can be the same.
The credits roll, we get a very uplifting song about Angel Hare helping people, and then we also see a screen loading with all three of them looking over to it, implying there's some type of future for the series, and Jonah also wearing a Wreath of Life hat, which is a little confusing and kind of implies that anyone working on the outside is Wreath of Life or something like that, but again, we don't get an explanation for this. Overall, it is a very happy ending, unless you want to get into the deeper stuff on like, are these two beings using Jonah or something like that, but if you go off of the comments that the creators have replied to, I don't think that's the case. I think it is meant to be taken at face value as a happy ending. There isn't really a pretension of horror anymore, it really does just feel like it is meant to be a good happy ending. The song, the credits, the even hinting at a possible future of him helping them and things like that. Like I said, it is a very happy ending, but to me it's also a very convenient and rushed one, and that's why I have mixed towards negative feelings on it. Hey, this is Editing Ghost here to add this to say I know that Season 3 has just began to air as I'm finishing editing this. I'm going to talk about the trailer and the first episode here at the end. This is just about Season 2's conclusion and how I feel about it. A lot of people in the Angel Hare fandom really like it, and I get why. The setup with Gabby as a guardian angel of children in need makes her a very likable character, even with the horror undertones. And as it goes into Season 2, it feels like the horror is left behind and takes a complete backseat to the characters and the mysteries as it transitions from this slightly horror-themed show to a more noir setting because of the introduction of Zag. Even in the first season, in my opinion, there was always more of a veneer of horror anyway, a slight creepiness. If it was planned from the beginning that Gabby and Zag are both just good actual angels, then the creepiness could have been a red herring from the start, but sometimes things can seem creepy and also be good. I mean, you're watching a horror channel, right? I did mention earlier that the audience's reaction to the characters could have facilitated this change. People really do like Gabby, and I don't know how well they would have reacted to her being evil in some way, but I can't say that because I'm not the creators and I don't know their intentions. I don't particularly mind that Gabby or Zag are good characters. But it is implied that Gabby did help kill a guy even if he was a bad person, and the ending of season 2 just kind of ignores some of the heavier stuff from the first season. It seems to ignore a lot of the darker themes, including Jonah's attachment to Gabby and his obsession, the murder, and a lot of other things. Which, as I said much earlier, works with our main character's motivations, but I also wished it would have focused on that a bit more. I wished it wouldn't have given us such a rush ending, because it does feel like it's trying to solve Jonah being obsessed with Gabby with him just saying, I want you around, I'm happy even if you're flawed, but I feel like more should have been done with that, at least for me personally. Whether intentional or not, I do think Jonah's obsessive tendencies are a theme in this series. We don't know much about Jonah outside of the series, as I've said so many times throughout it, but he goes so far as to say at points that Gabby is all he needs, that she makes his life normal. It shows a strong attachment to her and reliance on her for his happiness. And it seems they tried to go for an ending about setting boundaries and him being able to have her in his life, but it just did it super quickly, and it was just like, oh, okay, things are fixed.
Would it bother you, Jonah, if I'm not the perfect guardian you remember? If things didn't stay the way they were, and I needed you too? And now you can be the same.
And I think Jonah's obsession with the past, and specifically Gabby, is a really interesting and mature topic that could have been explored more thoroughly throughout the show, and part of the reason I'm disappointed with the ending is because the ending's payoff isn't satisfying in my opinion. It just felt like there was a lot of build-up to show us that what Gabby was unnatural, that Jonah was obsessed, the heavy breathing, the way he talked about her when she disappears, the way he seeks her out and ignores the truth. And then by the end, it's just kind of like, hey, they're friends, it's all good, which I wasn't happy with, but we are, of course, getting more Angel Hare. Season 3 has begun to air, and it seems like it's going to be exploring some more of those complicated topics, but we're going to wrap up how I feel about Season 1 and 2 first. I do think the first season is a lot stronger than the second. Not only does it have the creepy factor, but it also deals with some heavy topics in interesting ways. The ending of the first season is a really nice wrap-up for it, and has some pretty spooky vibes to it in the way that Jonah and Gabby interact. I really like the change of his motivation from finding the truth to just coming back in contact with her. It gives it this really weird vibe of something like unnatural going on. And I do like the first half of the second season a lot, how Jonah's creeped out by Zag, despite Zag being, for all intents and purposes, just a less creepy version of Gabby, in my opinion. It does make sense though, and I think that is done on purpose to show us like, hey, he's reacting this way to this new thing, but not to Gabby. Of course, this doesn't mean I disliked the second half of Season 2. I like the detective spin, I like the character design of Zag and the way he interacts with Jonah, and the subtle hints at the detective's theming as well as the overall vibe. I also enjoyed seeing Francis become more of a character, but I did find the conclusion to be less cohesive and impactful than Season 1 because of the execution. I have also talked a lot throughout this video on the fact that they, being Zag, Gabby, and also possibly Francis and Francine, are something besides actual angels. I still think that is a strong possibility considering Francis and Francine become aware at the end, it seems. Maybe they're beings that believe they're angels or know they aren't, but still use that to help people because that's what they know. It's a fun idea, and I think that's why the show doesn't say outright what they are, to let people play with those thoughts. That idea that they could be really anything, but they're helpful and they're kind. Having said that, by the end of the series, I do feel like the biblical connections are a little bit tighter. Jonah, in deciding to help Gabby and Zag, is closer to his biblical counterpart because he is technically spreading the word of God. Gabby, being Gabriel, has always had a pretty tight connection. Gabriel is, of course, the archangel that delivers the word of God, and it could be seen that her helping children is, of course, the will of God. And Zag, being the angel of wisdom, lines up with what I could find on Zagzagel and lines up with his character being a private investigator. But there is also the possibility that the angels in the Bible are inspired by these beings, which is also an interesting idea. That Gabby and Zag existed and influenced the Bible is a cool thought, and it's probably not where they're gonna go, but I love thinking about stuff like that. I personally do like the idea more that they aren't the angels from the Bible directly, that they aren't these actual biblical angels that work for God, so to speak. And it's actually more complicated than that there's some type of being outside of that or related to it, especially considering the idea that Francis and Francine both seem to have their own sentience, which is really interesting and something that isn't dealt with as the series has gone on. Yet. Not to mention they only quote the Bible and don't give like new words of God or anything like that, and the Bible is technically human creation, but we're not going to get into all of that because I'm not trying to start an argument or a war in the comments. That's just a fun thought to like bounce around in your head. If I were a better writer, I would have written a shorter video, but here I am. I have one last thing to say before we go to the outro segment. While researching thumbnail ideas for this video, I happened upon a comment on the Immortal Marcus video covering Angel Hare. This comment by Robin details how Angel Hare is about how kids use television as a way to cope with hard things, and I couldn't believe I hadn't thought of this myself. While it isn't one-to-one because of course Gabby, Zag, Francis, and all of the other characters in Angel Hare really are alive in the universe of the show, on a metaphorical level it really does work. I've talked throughout this video on Jonah's mental health, what he does outside of his interactions with Gabby, and to some degree it parallels my own life. Jonah relied on this media to get him through a hard time, almost literally as Gabby did help him do something to the bad person in his life. And then without it, he seemed to have created a vacuum in his life until he got her back, or at least that's kind of what the series implied. As a young kid, I had a pretty bad childhood. Not the worst, but definitely not the best. And I often turned to media to distract myself from the things going on around me. Usually in the form of video games, but also TV, movies, books, and as I got older, YouTube. I remember locking myself in my room for days and just marathoning video games, playing through all of Okami after Christmas, and all of the Elder Scrolls Oblivion after Christmas. And when I bought myself Alan Wake with my own money, I locked myself in my room and basically just played it all the way through for 4 days straight. Or how I basically marathoned all of Doctor Who up until the 11th Doctor in a series of like a few weeks. These different forms of media colored the way I looked at the world, but also distracted me from other things I should have been doing. They did help me when I needed a distraction from bad things, but to be honest, when I got older, the sort of fantasy-like reality that I escaped to sort of crashed down around me as the expectations of adult life settled in. I dealt with and still do deal with difficulties from being underprepared for the real world when I got older. This isn't blaming media fully, of course, as the adults in my life should have done more to teach me, but there was a lot going on. Life is complicated. My situation is complicated. I still do love media and video games, and they play a big part in my life if you can't tell from my YouTube channel. But there is a healthy balance. Jonah having this unhealthy level of attachment to Gabby is really interesting when looked at through this lens. She brought him comfort in times that he needed it, just like how many kids and even teenagers and adults seek comfort and distraction in media. He formed a very real relationship with this character, just like how many people do with series and characters they love in media. And while the relationship he formed with Gabby is more real than in our world, to a lot of people the relationship they form with media can feel very real. But it can also be unhealthy, like Jonah's was with Gabby. Just like I talked about with Jonah and his dependence on Gabby, some people become overly dependent on media to help them with the things that they have a problem with, and that doesn't really solve your problems. The series does try to have a moment at the end of season 2 of you can have a healthy relationship with media or a person you depend on, but as I said earlier, I still feel like it didn't pull it off as well as it could have. But with this idea or message in mind, it does recontextualize Season 2's ending for me a little bit. Do I still like it could have been done a lot better? Yes. But it's still a great message nonetheless, even if it didn't come through greatly to me, because I guess I'm dumb or whatever. And it seems these themes are going to be explored even more in Season 3. This little bit here at the end is not all-encompassing, of course. There's a lot more I could have said, there's a lot more I could have done, but this video has taken very long to come out now anyway, and what I just said isn't perfect. It's just a representation of this idea that a commenter put forward that I really liked. Let me know what you think about this idea and the rest of my video in the comments down below. But now, we're going to cover Season 3. And this was originally where the outro was going to be, but of course things happen. My mental health took a dive, and by the time I started working on this video again, it was closer to the end of August. And you know where this is going. Angel Hare Season 3 was announced on a live stream done by the Mangan sisters, where they dropped a new trailer. This trailer seemed to feature a messy room, clips from Angel Hare playing on a laptop, and a new human character who seems to know Jonah, but didn't have someone like Gabby in their life based on the text. If we go off the thumbnail as well, we can see that the third angel from the painting in the first season is present, but blacked out, while Gabby and Zag are both shown, hinting at the fact that we may finally find out their identity while we still don't know it yet. Then, on the first Sunday of September, as fun fact, the episodes always release on Sundays relating to the religious theming, the first episode of Season 3 dropped. Season 3 is honestly a massive change from Season 1 R2, but also a return to form in my opinion. This season feels, right off the bat, more like Season 1 than 2 ever did. Having said that, there is a lot to unpack with this first episode alone. First off, we do have a new character like the trailer hinted at. His name is Segan. He knows Jonah, and this video is in fact him contacting Jonah. The season is going to follow a game instead of a show. This comes with a sort of return to form for the series, as we do get a comparison between the regular version of the game and Segan's haunted or living version of the game, similar to how Jonah compared the two different versions of Angel Hare in Season 1. Like Jonah, the game is different for Segan, but it actually seemed to start normal and change as his life did. It seemed to try and make Segan feel better, be more assertive, and deal with, well, Jonah. See, his game not only had voice acting, which the original didn't.
Kidnapped the princess while we were off stack grinding.
You must go to the orchard. The opposition that awaits you there.
It not only had new characters added and new quests, which the original didn't, but it also had people from his real life in it. There's even a list in the background at some point pointing out other possible people who might have been in the game. But the core one here is Jonah. And the game implies that Jonah was a real problem for Segan, as you can see in the scenes I'm playing right now. The game itself also portrays Jonah as a shady character, both figuratively and literally, giving him a shady-looking face and a bully style of voice and talking.
Hey! Segan!
Not to mention, straight up, that Segan calls himself Jonah's alibi, meaning that he is wound up in Jonah's past more than just being his friend.
Ever forgive me? Go to a friend's house when something bad happens, and you won't have to lie about it when they ask you later.
I know I probably don't have to spell it out for you, but it's very obvious that Segan has something to do with the events in Jonah's past. And very likely the events that led to Jonah losing his memory, and whatever happened to the abusive person from his past that we still don't know about. In fact, this whole situation almost implies that Jonah still doesn't have his memories back, which is something I talked about earlier, whether he did or not. Even furthering this whole situation is that Jonah happens to have a copy of this game, which he remembers upon seeing this. But of course, this opens up a lot of questions too, especially as Gabby hesitates and says,
"Wait."
So, okay, that's a lot. First, yes, I'm very happy that we're back to the darker theming and tone of the show. It seems like we might finally get some resolutions to the big questions from the first season. Segan being Jonah's alibi means that he has some type of attachment to Jonah's past, specifically the situation that was explored in Season 1. But Segan also seems to have demons of his own, especially related to Jonah as a person, which is something else I've talked about, the fact that we don't know who Jonah really is outside of his relationship with Gabby. Not to mention the implications of Jonah having a copy of the game but not seeming to remember it until getting this video from Segan. This could mean that whatever led to Jonah losing his memory has to do with this game. In fact, if I'm going to go full-blown conspiracy theory mode before the next episode is even out, it could be that Gabby wasn't the reason for Jonah losing his memory at all, but this third angel who is more than likely tied to this game. This would make sense as to why Jonah still doesn't remember it, and why Gabby hesitates. It could also mean that, yes, Jonah hasn't ever gotten his memory back, and really does just not care because of how happy he simply was to have Gabby in his life. The plot thickens so much. Segan himself seems to confirm my idea that people become obsessed with these beings as well, or at least the media they come from, as he admits that he hasn't stopped playing this game since he was a kid, despite the implied negative impacts it's had on his life. Segan seems to have a lot of grudges built up within him, especially towards Jonah. The game itself implies Jonah to be his opposition, and someone who, at least to Segan, pushed him around and didn't have his best interests at heart.
But be strong and begin discovering what you can do against those who don't have your interests in mind.
Now, remember earlier when I talked about the Angel Hare game not being canon? Well, I still think it isn't because it was made for a game jam, but it really is neat and possibly not coincidental that this current season centers around a video game. This does mix up the ideas of how these angel beings interact with the world. I'm really excited to see how this goes, especially exploring what these characters are if we do ever find out. You know, considering that Angel, Gabby, and Zaggy also brought to life Francis and Francine, apparently, or at least they are alive. I'm also really excited to see the exploration of Jonah's past, who he might be as a person, and get this final angel, if that is what they are, revealed to us. I have to say that the mix of video game styled animation, the music, and filmmaking is all stellar here. This first episode has a lot of fun, dark stuff on its own, and I'm really interested to see where the narrative is going to take us this season. I like the clash between Jonah and Segan so far. At least from a visual storytelling perspective, Jonah is a lot more private and secretive. Yes, he is still posting videos online about himself, but he does hide his face and use text to explore his feelings. Segan is a lot more visually upfront. He shows himself and he talks directly with his voice to the camera. This might not seem like much at first glance, but it strikes me as an important differentiation between the two characters. Segan seems to be more willing to confront this situation and find the truth, where Jonah just wanted Gabby in his life and comfort. Again, I'm really excited to see the darker themes of the show be explored again, Jonah's background and him as a character, as well as this new character Segan and this third angel. Let's do it. I'm pumped. On a more technical note, I want to talk about the fact that the series overall, but especially as it's gone on, uses a mix of different filmmaking perspectives to explore its narrative. At the start of the series, and through most of Season 1, we explore it from a subjective point of view, following Jonah as he talks to us as the audience through YouTube videos, as is confirmed by the fact that Segan could find his videos and respond to them with a video of his own. But we also get scenes like the end of Season 1, the end of Season 2, and this from Season 3, which is from an omniscient perspective, us watching Jonah but not part of the video, being an outside view of sorts. It seems that the series is both a YouTube video in the world of Angel Hare, but also us watching at times from an omniscient viewer perspective. I think this is cool to see this because it helps them give a more cinematic feel to certain parts, but it also makes it more interesting, like what parts of the series are YouTube videos and what parts are us watching from outside of Jonah's perspective. Obviously, some of that final shot in Season 1 is an omniscient perspective, but how much of it is, and how much of it is supposed to be Jonah holding a camera? It's something fun to think about. Having said all that, when I began to think about this as well, I did have a moment where I wondered why no police have ever come to check out Jonah, especially considering the implied crimes that have happened in the past. But that's only a small suspension of disbelief problem. This is a series dealing with angels in people's televisions and games, and I'm sure the police would think it was fake even if it was real. Some other cool stuff about the first episode of Season 3 is the fact that the fake YouTube channel made to talk about the game, Hyrax and the Rocks, is actually real, and the video is up there for you to go check out. It really is just there for comparison to give it some authenticity feeling. I don't think it's really important to watch it, but it is fun nonetheless, and you can tell a lot of work went into this from the people working on Angel Hare. Hyrax and the Rocks, the game featured, is a play on words, on an actual real animal that is in our world. A cute animal that has become popular in memes over the last year and is in fact on the cover. I thought that was Francis at first, but that's more than likely a Hyrax. This is what a Hyrax looks like, by the way. The main bad guy of the game is a jester that has kidnapped a princess, who is featured on the cover and looks incredibly ominous. But I also think it's going to be fun if it turns out that this jester character is actually that final angel. It would really set up this character as kind of an ominous last boss type for the season. Also, this is kind of obvious, but the licensee of the game is AWOL Interactive, which is a not-so-subtle code for A Wreath of Life Interactive. I also love in this scene how Jonah is watching the video and he has all these monitors set up so Zag and Francine and Gabby and Francis can all watch with him. It's really fun and it makes it look like they're all puzzling it out together. This new season seems like it might answer a lot of my questions and complaints with Season 2. Who is Jonah outside of these videos? Well, we might get to see more of that from another person's perspective. We'll also get to see this third angel in the form of a video game, which is really rad, and we've gone back to some of the darker aspects of the show overall. It isn't scary per se, but it is spooky and fun in a very cartoony Halloween special kind of way, which I personally love. I'm glad that it's gone back to something like that, and I'm really looking forward to this third season, and we'll be making a video on it when it's done. But for now, Angel Hare is a fantastic series. An analog horror mystery thriller or something like that. It's really hard to label because it does a lot. And as I said before, it's really carried by its charm. The simple animations and the subtle ways they use it to express different things. The strong voice performances and purposeful stylistic choices. The titles hinting at what's to come and the music and everything else. It's not a perfect series, but for one made by such a small team, it really is amazing. The first series is very dark and gripping, and the second, while I think the ending weak in comparison to the first and the mystery not as satisfying, is fun in its twists and turns, and the ending ends up being uplifting. I was in a really dark place when watching it and still liked it even if I felt it flawed. With the recently airing Season 3, I am so glad to see a return to the overall creepy and spooky vibes that the first series had. In fact, I'd say Season 3 so far feels even more so like that. Something I miss personally are spooky Halloween-like or scary shows that aren't overly gruesome or excessive. Just fun and vibey. The type of stuff that was meant to be scary but you could watch on daytime television. Of course, there's already a reference to Courage the Cowardly Dog in this video, but shows like that or even The Twilight Zone. And I'm glad there's a series like Angel Hare that at least feels like it's trying to continue a legacy of something like that. Not only that, but the idea of Angel Hare itself is pretty unique to the analog horror space, at least in its execution, with all of the animation and the established relationship between the characters and things like that. It's a lighthearted and fun series with a spooky undertone at times. It's not too much, but it's not too little. It's great. If you're watching this, there is a possibility that the rest of Season 3 has aired or is airing. Don't worry, I plan on covering it in the future, but this video has been long enough as it is. This isn't even the original outro. I'm actually going to include that at the end as well as a bit more as a little treat because this video has taken too long to come out. If the Mangan sisters are watching this, which I'm not assuming they are, but if they are, thank you for making Angel Hare, and thank you to Salty or Obsessed for recommending me making this video. And thank you to these lovely YouTube members, Froiner, Ashbob5000, Ren, aka Salty or Obsessed, who I just mentioned, and also thank you to my lovely patrons on Patreon, Cade Kirk, Stream, Seraphin Noir, and Southbridge. Check out my Patreon in the link below and the YouTube memberships by clicking the join button below. And that's a wrap on my Angel Hare video. If you feel you've missed anything, have your own opinions, positive or otherwise, let me know. Even if I have some critical things to say, I think Angel Hare as a series is really good, it's really unique, and really fun. I definitely think it's a watch, especially if you like the other things that I've talked about on my channel. And the Mangan sisters, the creators of it, are continuing to make unique and interesting projects. The project they have up now after the second series of Angel Hare is called Rot, and like Angel Hare, it's about people interacting with a world behind a screen, though this one is more science fiction than paranormal fantasy. Basically, people on a space station voting on criminals' punishments. It's really neat, and I recommend watching it. It took me a little bit to get into, but I really enjoyed it and watched it all the way through when I did get into it. And to you, fair viewer, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you can understand my perspective, even if you disagree with it. I hope you have a wonderful day, or night, or eternity if you're trapped in a void somewhere. I'm GhostsOnHoliday. Thank you for letting me haunt your devices for just a little bit. And remember,
Stop fucking with the microwave!
And now for some bonus rambling. I started working on this video in mid to late July, and then sometime in late July I had a small nervous breakdown, or like a huge panic attack, and I'm basically still recovering from that episode while working on this video. If you're watching it now, I am planning on releasing it. It's Friday, September 6th, as long as everything goes good when I upload it. And, you know, the first episode of Angel Hare already released last Sunday. Then the next one's going to release this next Sunday. And I'm basically just recording this to say, you know, I've been going through a lot in my personal life, but I'm still working on videos. And I just wanted to talk about that. This video took a lot out of me because I've been trying to work on it while dealing with my mental health struggle. And I know there's going to be people who will hear this segment and they're going to be like, take time for you. Don't make yourself work. But, you know, I kind of need to. I put this off a lot, and I feel like not working on it didn't help my mental health, but I've also been pushing myself a little too much. So I am going to take a very small break, but I'm going to immediately start on another video. I have a script finished for that should be out this month as well. Hopefully, that video is also going to be really long. Its script is even longer than this one, and I added a lot to this because things kept happening, like the new episode coming out and the trailer, but I really appreciate everyone's patience, and I hope that the video turned out good. I hope people can understand my point of view and maybe why it feels kind of messy, because I, in my own head, was kind of messy. My head was like a messy place to be in during the making of this. And so, you know, towards the end of it, I changed my mind on some things. I changed some things back, but a lot of this is as it was. And so it's not a perfect video, but I still looked at it and really liked it. My friends told me that they liked the script and what I had to say. So I'm happy with what I've made, even if I feel it's not perfect, which, you know, I kind of criticized Angel Hare for not being perfect, and so it kind of fits. I really do like this series, and I'm looking forward to more of it. This third season seems really, really, really cool. I hope it does well. I hope you like it. And yeah, this is like a second or third like outro for this video, and I hope that doesn't affect it, but it might. I feel insane, frankly, but not really. I just mean, like, you know, just so much going on. That's life. Thanks for watching.